So, Secret Window. I think this is a movie that would make a pretty good double feature, double bill with 1408, because there are similarities between the movies. Both are about writers, both are based on Stephen King short stories, and both involve the lead character kind of in isolation and encountering possibly supernatural happenings. The movie came out in 2003, literally like right after Pirates of the Caribbean came out. So at this point, Johnny Depp was like the hugest star in the world, and so this definitely was a hit, mainly because of Johnny Depp. And this is one of the few movies where he seems sort of like himself, like at least not like covered in makeup and all that stuff, which is good because I mean, this look like how he looks in this movie is kind of like how he looks out in public. You know, he has like the little goatee, the glasses, the little fedora, and things like that. So it's I think it's a kind of fresh change of pace from him always being in this elaborate makeup, and it's a fairly downplayed performance. It's not a very exuberant kind of a kabuki kind of performance like some of the ones that he usually does. So I think the performance from Johnny Depp alone is worth seeing this movie for, but definitely also a very strong supporting cast too, because again, much like with 1408, this involves a writer, and he's estranged from his wife. The wife in this movie is played by Maria Bello. They're still in contact with each other. She's trying to get him to sign the divorce papers, but he just kind of won't do it. There's also Charles S. Dutton playing a private detective who's kind of partnered up with Depp's character. And there is this crazy kind of wanderer played by John Turturro, who's really great in the movie. He's really creepy. That's essentially, it's a very simple plot, and that's how it kind of gets started. The John Turturro character kind of happens upon Johnny Depp, the writer. He's like, "You stole my story," and he's like, "No, I didn't. I wrote it here, and you said you wrote it then." Blah blah blah, and he's like threatening him and all that stuff. So it kind of becomes this kind of mysterious, threatening character is making his life a living hell, basically, which is a living hell enough. His wife had cheated on him. He's struggling to write his next book or next collection of short stories. And I think that's one thing that this movie captures really, really nicely is kind of like the writing process. Like every writer, of course, is a little bit different, but we always have this idea in our heads of what a writer is like, and this seems to be it exactly. Like there's a lot of self-loathing, and there's a lot of boredom. And there's scenes that we see where he is bored, but it's not boring for us, the audience, which I think is kind of the key into making the movie good. Like for just like him sitting staring at the screen, it wouldn't be very entertaining, like just looking at his laptop and typing. No, he kind of talks to himself, mumbles to himself, sneaks a cigarette every now and then, and has a very, very poor diet, including peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and Doritos, which is like something like an 8-year-old would eat after school. But that's just his character. So I think he does the character very well in this movie, and there are some good suspenseful moments, and I think the plot is tight enough that it keeps your interest. Though maybe the biggest complaint about the movies, or not even complaint, just like a general criticism that I think most people would agree with, is that it is fairly predictable. Like it reaches a point where you're like, is this what's going to happen? And then it's like, oh yeah, this happens. Just in case you haven't seen it, I don't think I'll spoil it, but it does arrive at a point where, while it is predictable a little bit, I think it has a kind of, I'd say, a fair amount of guts to end the way that it does, because we don't normally see movies end quite as dark as this one does, but at the same time it feels like a very entertaining type of movie, so it's not completely full of like despair and misery or anything like that. So that's a fine balance to kind of walk in. I think David Koepp, who's more known as a writer, I think he did a good job in creating this movie. So maybe that's something he understood, being a writer himself. It's a very entertaining, great performance by Johnny Depp. Supporting cast: Maria Bello, John Turturro, Charles S. Dutton, all great in this movie. So, well, I don't think it's like the greatest thriller in the world. I think it is at least worth viewing, at least just once. It's definitely not something you can watch over and over again, or maybe you can. Maybe if you like respond to the character enough, you'll find something worth visiting back to. And I've seen this twice so far, and I was very entertained each time. So, got to give it to this movie. Secret Window, really good movie. So. That's my review of Secret Window. So be sure, if you're looking for a Stephen King short story about writers, double bill 1408 and Secret Window should do the trick, I would say. So plenty more 31 Days of Horror to come. Be sure to keep an eye out on that. New videos every day. Be sure to check out my older playlists. I'll put a link below of the past years where I did these 31 Days of Horror. And comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, I'll see you later.